Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com. Hello and welcome to episode 114. 114 is a good number, and it is an especially interesting number because this may be the last episode of the Writer's Journey. I'm just kidding. It won't be the last episode of the Writer's Journey, but it will be the last episode of the Writer's Journey with my current microphone. Maybe, kind of. Maybe next week, we'll see. I bought a new microphone, and so I'm going to be switching to that. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Didn't mean to give anyone heart palpitations or anything, but part of podcasting is building the suspense, right? So in announcements, first off, thank you to everyone who reached out about royalties and who gave me some words of encouragement. So, the last 3 weeks I've been talking about databases, and I was shocked at how many people reached out to me and said, hey, I really enjoyed these past few episodes, enjoyed the blog post and blog series, YouTube series, so on and so forth. This is something that I really want, but I understand that not everybody wants it. And so your feedback was very valuable for me. And one person in particular reached out and said, hey, just so you know, Orna Ross and Joanna Penn were talking about this on the most recent episode of the Ask Ally Advanced Self-Publishing Salon. And that was a little bit of Michael, you got caught with your pants down here because I have a podcast that's in that podcast network. And I didn't even know that they were talking about it. And so I went and listened to that. And we're going to talk more about that in a minute because that was something that was very, very eye-opening. So like I said, I can't thank all of you enough for reaching out to me. When you reach out to me and give me feedback about the show and about what you like and what you don't like, I never take that personally, right? Like if you tell me about something that you like, I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Like those sorts of emails make my day. But if you tell me something, hey, I would like to see you talk about this or, maybe talk about that, that's cool because that helps me get an idea of what you guys are thinking and how to improve the show. So I just want to let you all know that I always appreciate when you reach out to me. And another announcement is that what I'm going to be doing, I've had conflicting thoughts about this royalty thing. And it's not going to be the topic of today's episode, but I am going to talk about it. I've gone back and forth with doing something about this and then not doing something about it. And it's tough. It's tough because it's like, well, it's like you're going to the graveyard. Many before you have tried this and have failed. And, but if you do crack the nut, wow, it's kind of cool, right? So what I've decided to do in the meantime, while I'm still trying to wrestle with this and get comfortable with my database and kind of figure out the quirks is I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to do something I've never done before. I am going to write a book. It's going to be a very, very short book, but it's going to be a manifesto about this. It's going to be I don't know what the title is going to be, but it's going to be about the royalty problem. And the book is going to be a thought experiment that basically compiles everything that I've learned throughout this process in talking with other people, in building a database of my own, and then looking at all of the existing attempts and failures to solve this problem in the self-publishing community. And I'm going to publish those as a book. I don't know if the book will be free, but it will certainly be affordable. And think about that book as like a time capsule, right? Where are we today with the author royalty problem? And if someone were to come about with a solution to solve this problem, what would it need to look like? What would the features need to be? And what are some of the huge problems that you're going to have to get over, right? Because I've learned over the past 3 weeks, I am not the person to solve this problem. I'm just not. I've solved it for myself, right? And I'm reaping the benefits for it. But what I don't know is how to solve it for the community. I don't have the skill set to do it. And as I said before, I don't want to be in the business of software development. I've seen too many horror stories, particularly in this community, with authors that try to get into the software business and they get their knees chopped off or their kneecaps chopped. Forgive the violent imagery here. But I'm just simply trying to say they get chewed up and spit out. And I just don't want to be one of those people. I would much rather be, involved in thought leadership and helping maybe steer it and providing some input and certainly guidance and advice. So look for that soon. I'm in the process of working on a book right now. Once I finish that and wrap that up, I'm going to jump right into this because it's all fresh in my mind. And quite frankly, this is something I'll probably write in a weekend and get a cover. It won't take very long at all. So I know many of you, it's probably not going to be something that you're going to need at this point. But, if you do, you can buy this book and say, hey, Michael said something about royalties a couple years back, and he wrote some manifesto. I wonder what that manifesto is. And you can read it, and you can figure out what the issues are so you can figure out what your path is going to be. Because I think that is the ultimate problem. The problem here is that people can solve this problem on their own if they're willing to work at it. And if they're willing to spend money to do it. But there is no one-size-fits-all solution for the community. So I think that's how you have to think about it. It's almost like a every person for themselves kind of battle is really how you have to think about royalties. But anyway, more on that as it comes. Wins for the week. So all of my sales are now in my royalty database all the way through March 2020. 2 months back because of Amazon, right? So I now have amazing insights into my business and into my readers, and I really feel like I've really created something cool, and it just feels great. So now I'm in the process of getting all of my books into the database, and that's a whole nother battle, but it doesn't take very long. Just the hard part is going off and finding all the links. You really have to be in the right mindset for it. And the second win for the week is that I finished proofing my new book. The new book is a book I'm writing in conjunction with the Alliance of Independent Authors, and it's called Your Self-Publishing Questions Answered. It's 150 questions that we answer to help you publish, market, and write your next book. And essentially, this was an idea that I pitched to Orna Ross. She's the director of the Alliance of Independent Authors. And, we co-host a Ask Ally member Q&A podcast where we answer self-publishing questions every month. And we kept seeing the same questions over and over again. I said, what if we built or wrote the most comprehensive self-publishing answer book on the market? Meaning end-to-end, the entire self-publishing process. Any question that a newbie or someone who's maybe early in their career would want to know, could we find the answers to that? Because here's the thing, Ally sits on this huge gold mine of data, right? They've got a weekly blog, they've got podcasts, and they've been doing this since 2012. And there is a lot of really good information on there. So how do we tie all that together and synergize it into one book that, one, will be extremely helpful to Ally's members, because they'll get it for free. So if you're an Ally member, or if you're not a member and you want to join, authorlevelup.com/ally, ally with an I. And if you're a member, then you get the book for free. So it's a value add to their membership, right? And then also it's a book that can drive revenue for the organization. Nonprofit organizations always need revenue, right? And also it's something that we can send people to that bring up the same questions over and over again on the show, because they're members. Only members can ask questions on the show. So it's a free resource that we can send them to for the most commonly asked questions to free up time for some of the questions that maybe we haven't heard before. So it's kind of a win-win. And Orna sent me her edits. I have gone through them. I've sent them back to her. There are some small tweaks that we need to make to the cover. But one of the cool things that I've decided to do with this, I put it on pause for a few months, but I am going to produce the audiobook edition. So I am going to narrate the audiobook edition for this book. And that also means that an audiobook edition, assuming this goes well, for Mental Models for Writers is going to be coming as well. And I will even do the audiobook edition for this new manifesto that I'm doing. So I'm going to get a lot of practice. and since I'm home all the time now, it's a great opportunity to, start doing this and pick up a new skill that will hopefully be of value and of service to people in the community. So we haven't set on a release date for this yet. I think it's going to be summer. If it's not summer, it'll be early fall, but it will be this year. So the book is called Your Self-Publishing Questions Answered. Just rest assured that I will continue to talk about this and let everybody know when it comes about. But for those of you who are have questions about self-publishing and you want a thorough resource that will be helpful for you, not just today, but into the future, this is going to be your book. So, lessons learned this week. I have a business lesson, something that I learned, and it's that even established authors are not doing their own royalties. So I mentioned this earlier, but I was flabbergasted to hear Joanna Penn and Orna Ross both admit in the Ask Ally Advanced Self-Publishing Salon that they don't and can't track their royalties, at least on a monthly basis. Joanna Penn said this is something that she desperately wants someone to solve in the community. Orna said the same thing, and they both said, either have an assistant do it or you can get all your data at the end of the year and do it that way. But it's very difficult to be able to do this on a monthly basis. And that's the problem that I have solved, which is really, really interesting, right? And Dave Chesson was actually watching the show, Dave Chesson of Kindlepreneur, and he commented that he actually had started a project to solve this problem with Brian Meeks. And if you know both of those guys, the power of those two guys' minds is just unbelievable. They had tried to solve this problem, but they bowed out because of the programming and technical issues. So, wow. I mean, that's just unbelievable. I mean, that's unfathomable for a moment, right? I mean, I have mad respect for Dave Chesson, right? Dave Chesson is he is a just an asset to our community, right? And if he can't solve this problem, that really tells you something about this, right? And so it just as I was listening to this, it was like, okay, my instincts were right. There's a reason people haven't been able to do this. I just don't necessarily know what those reasons were. And that's why I call this the graveyard. If you try it, you're going to get your head chopped off and you're going to join all the other bodies in this graveyard. And I personally, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not a fan of graveyards. So I don't want to deal with this. However, as I was thinking about this, I do think that there is something that I can do, and the manifesto is one of those things. I kind of played around with this idea of doing a course on this anyway, but like engaging in like the most weirdest marketing practices ever, like don't buy this course because it will chew you up and spit you out, like if you are willing to learn Access and you're willing to spend about a dozen hours, maybe 20 hours or more learning this program and beating your head against your desk for all the technical issues that you may come across, then you can make it. There's a restaurant in my city. I hope it survives. There's a place called Jethro's Barbecue in Des Moines. It's kind of a city famous barbecue. They've got multiple locations, and they had this sandwich, and it was featured on the Food Network, and it's called the Adam Amenecker Challenge. And I don't even know it's just this ungodly sandwich. I mean, it's like a pork tenderloin and a burger and chicken patties and like 2 pounds of French fries. I mean, the thing is like 3 feet tall. I mean, it's so tall they have to hold it together with like little sticks that they put in the middle of it. and all these people try to eat this sandwich. And they have to finish it, I think, in like an hour. And if they finish it, then they get their picture taken and they get it on the wall. And if they don't, you got to pay for this sandwich, which is, I think it's like $50-$60 or something like that. And so many people try it, but so few win. And I wonder if starting a course like that might be the better way to do it. Like, I would be happy to put together a course on this. One, it would be great because I could get to know Access a little bit better. So I win because, well, I'm learning more about the program and I can become more adept in it. And by teaching people how to use it is one of the best ways to do that. Two, it does solve some people's problems. Like it would not have mass appeal, but I would only want people in this course that are willing to work, right? So I would actively weed out people to do it. That's the only way I can think to do a course like this. So, I'm kind of exploring my options, figuring it out, but it won't be anytime soon because I really need to, I've got other stuff I need to do, and more content that I need to create for you guys. But if I do it, it will be some very interesting marketing to weed out people. Let's put it that way. So anyway, I went on very long with that. My idea for the week, this is an idea. If somebody listening, you can take it, you can run with it. I don't want it. And that is Microsoft Excel for writers, right? I subcaptioned this, the writer's guide to getting the most out of Excel. So I've always said Microsoft Excel doesn't suit my mind. It's not how I think. But there are a lot of writers that use Excel, and they have learned to do some wizardy things with it. And, it would be interesting if some people could share that with the community, right? Because I think even though I use Access now, I still think Excel is a very important life skill. And I think we all could benefit from being better at it, especially those of us who are not Excel people. And so if there was someone out there that wanted to put together a quick course, teaching people how to track their royalties and how to do better data visualization and how to maybe do some things that you never even knew Excel could do. Right? If you could make that easy, if you could make it simple, kind of like Learn Scrivener Fast by Joe Nicoletti. Like if it was something like that, I think the right person could make good money on a course like this. But that person ain't me. So you can have that idea. Just let me know. I'll be a customer. Give me the course for free. I'll be a customer. All right. So topic of the week. So I've been thinking this week a lot about strategy. And, I talk about this, that you can never think about that enough during a time like this. And I was reading a post by Christine Catherine Rush where she was talking about planning for dual futures. I was reading some posts by James Altucher earlier this week about some of his thoughts on uncertainty and how mastering uncertainty will be the most important skill that successful people coming out of this pandemic will have exhibited. I've been reading some things by Seth Godin, just talking. He asked a really great question in one of his blog posts this week. Seth Godin's blog is great. If you've never heard of it, I think it's sethgodin.com. He does these really short blog posts, but they're short, but they're so good. I mean, he just asks great questions. And in one of his questions, he asks, when this is all over, what will you have done and what will you have contributed? Now, I have to clarify that he wasn't simply saying don't waste this time, right? Like if you're struggling right now and you can't write or you have less time to write, that's cool. One of the things he suggested was, well, what are the little things you can do, right? Like calling a neighbor and trying to offer a hand or helping another author in your community. Like it's little victories that I think are the most important things that we can do during this time when we feel like we don't have any control. And so I got to thinking this week about this idea of dual futures, right? What would your life be like if you had to plan for dual futures, right? What if future A was bright, but future B was bleak? And what if there was a 50-50 chance of either one coming to pass at the end of this year or the end of next year? How would you handle that? It's an interesting thought, right? Because I think that in our lives, we have had to deal with things where maybe situation A happens, situation B happens, but this is on a different level, right? And so that's an interesting question that I have been trying to answer for myself this week, because as I think about all the things that could potentially be on the horizon, and again, I'm not going to devolve this into a coronavirus conversation, but I do think that strategy is important. And so I did an exercise, and I'm just going to share this with you all, and maybe this will be something that you find helpful. Maybe it's something that you can do, or maybe it'll get your mind thinking about some other ways that you could approach this. But I did an exercise, and I just basically in my writing app, I wrote down future A, which is a bleak future, right? So you think about the vaccine not being possible. You think about losing your job and your spouse or your significant other also losing their job. You think about social unrest in your country and distrust among your neighbors and perpetual money problems and people in your family dying. I mean, I wrote down as much bleakness as I could. Right? And it was kind of therapeutic, actually. I wrote down as much bleakness as I could, right? And then I wrote down how I would survive in this future, and better yet, how would I potentially thrive in this future? And then, because that was really bleak, I finished with writing down future B, which is a good future, which is the best possible scenario future, right? Where we get a vaccine or we get a powerful treatment, and I'm able to keep my job, and maybe I can find a better job because the job market needs more people, and everyone working from home, companies don't really care where you live anymore, so maybe there's more job opportunities, right? And then I wrote down how I would survive and thrive in this future, and that was just visualizing yourself being successful and coming out of this smiling, right? And so I wrote down the things that I thought I would need to survive, or the things I would need to do to survive. And then I had a really interesting list. I had future A, where everything sucks and there's really nothing to look forward to, and some things that I could do to be successful in that future, or at least at a bare minimum survive. And then I had future B, where the future was really bright, and some things that I could do to take advantage of that future and make it even brighter for myself and my family. And what an interesting thing was, since I had these in two different columns, I noticed that I had things that the futures both had in common. There were some things that I wrote down for the bleak future that I needed to do that were also present in some form in the good future. And so I was like, that's really interesting. Like, if future A comes to pass and life sucks, and future B comes to pass, or future B comes to pass and things are really, really good, I have some of the same things on that list. So as I think about positioning myself for the future, right, and looking out for my family and looking out for the ones that I love, and just trying to get through this in some meaningful way, well, why not do those things that are common to both of those futures? Doesn't mean I have to do them now, but as you think about changing course and changing direction, sometimes it's difficult. You can't just pivot on a dime during a time like this, right? You have to sometimes take baby steps, and you've got to. It's like a cruise ship. A cruise ship can't turn all the way really easily. It has to start turning slowly. So if you started turning your life slowly toward that direction and that future that you wanted to live in, what would that look like? And what would the steps that you want to take look like? What could you start doing tomorrow? And so I started putting some things into motion, and I'll share a couple of those things with you because I just think it's interesting. My survival, I think, in both of those futures, assuming no wild cards or whatever, but things that both of those futures had in common, if I wanted to survive, and again, this was just a thought exercise, was an increased YouTube presence for me. So I've been thinking over the past couple of years about going to 2 times a week on YouTube, or even 3 times a week, and doing more YouTube content, because YouTube is it's one of those low friction things, right? Like, I can make content and it gets watched, and I get compensated for it through no money out of any of your all's pockets, right? So I provide value to you, and I get compensation for it. But the thing is, I really enjoy YouTube. Like, some people talk about how they become a slave to it, and I think one of the reasons that I really, really enjoy it is because I've been able to build a pretty substantial audience by doing things that I just like. Like, yeah, I've done some videos that have been super targeted toward the YouTube algorithm. Sometimes it was a mistake, like it was just an accident, but I really enjoy that. So if I continue to double down and just do the things that I enjoy, that's kind of a win, right? Again, I just have to make sure that I don't become a slave to the algorithms. But if I continue utilizing YouTube in a way that fulfills me, how could I increase my YouTube presence? Now, that, again, that's not something I'm going to be doing overnight, right? It's going to be a slow ramp up toward that. But another thing was more books. More books. Writing more books is never never a bad thing. I'm teaching insurance classes. I think that continues to make a lot of sense. I'm going to be teaching those digitally now. And so heaven forbid, worst case scenario, things were to happen, I still have something that I can rely on to drive a little bit of income. So that's good. And then the next thing was new skills that I can learn, and not like new career skills, but what are just some things that I can pick up that could potentially be helpful for me. And one of those things was some things that I've been floating around in my head for a little bit. And one of those was audiobooks, right? So narrating my own audiobooks, I think, makes a lot of sense. I don't know that I would want to be narrating audiobooks for other people. But if I had the technology and if I had the skill set, I could do it, right? So that could be something that would be very helpful for me. So those are just a couple of things. There were other things, but just a couple of things that I had. Looking at both futures, I think those things make continued sense for me. And so one of the things that I did over the past few days was I sat down and I figured out, okay, now that I know what those commonalities are, what are some of the steps I can start taking so that at the end of the year, I can be in a better position to realize that future. And then this time next year, what would, if I started taking steps today, what would this potentially look like, right? Nothing's set in stone, like I said. But one of the things that I've continued doing, and I think this is vitally important for everybody right now. Keep writing books. I don't stop writing books. Don't let anybody talk you into not writing books anymore. That's crazy. Or delaying your launches. I mean, I just think that's nuts. Think about it like this. Build your infrastructure. Look at the weaknesses that exist in your business today, in your writing business. Were there things that you just weren't doing, that maybe you need to be better at? So like marketing, maybe this is your opportunity to get better at Amazon ads or Facebook ads. With me, one of my big things that, as I've been talking about over the past few weeks was royalties. How can I get better at that? This is a perfect time to get better at that and pick up a skill that will help me be more mindful about what I'm doing. I bet you have things that you maybe have thought about or milled around in the back of your head that maybe you could start taking baby steps toward as well. And may not necessarily just be related to being an author. Maybe it has to do with being a parent. Maybe it has to do with your current line of work, right? But I just think this is an interesting thought exercise. And again, like I said, I just don't think you can talk enough about strategy during a time like this. How do we as a community master uncertainty? And I don't know that I have the magic bullet answer, but it is something that I've been wrestling with and something that I will continue to talk about publicly because maybe some of you listening will find some benefit in it, because I think we're all in this together, and anything I can do to help other people come through this, I think is kind of an obligation for me right now at this point. So I hope everybody is well. Hope you're doing great. If you have any feedback for the show, don't be shy. I don't ever ask for reviews on the show, but if you happen to get value out of the show and you really like it, a review wouldn't hurt. Amazon, or not Amazon, but Apple. I don't even know how you leave reviews anymore. This is the worst call to action ever, isn't it? But if you like the show, a review would be great, as it helps more people find it. And like I said, I hope everyone is doing well. I hope where you are, the weather is really nice. And stay safe. Talk to you next week. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.